Yes, in the States today, or our government as they call it now, or today, they've been talking about themselves for a couple of days. Of course, there's one subject our elected representatives, so-called, like to do is talk about themselves. So they've had absolutely a talk fest, talking about what they're there for. Why are we here, somehow they were saying. It's almost as though they were having a great philosophical awakening. And they were trying to look at ways, or some of them were, of reforming the system. And they were referring quite a lot to blogs and the social media, as it's now called, as though that was the cause of the end of the world, is blogging, and how their life was made so difficult by bloggers. Now, this is probably not quite the first one, but I started blogging, as they call it. I rather like the word blog. It sounds good, doesn't it? It sounds like something fairly unusual, something with no particular shape to it. This is one of my first blogs in 2010, and it was about Matthieu Alexandre. Now, he was the editor, probably the owner as well, of the first Jersey newspaper. And I got this little thing here, you can see it, this is the article I wrote there, look, there he is. And it was Proposition 100, when they were very keen then to clamp down on the blogging. They were worried about it. Well, of course, this has gone on forever, hasn't it? Where do we get... They were sort of saying today, they were moaning today, the fact that the public gets their information off blog sites, as though there's somewhere else we ought to get it. We ought to get our information from. But of course, this is Matthieu Alexandre's first newspaper. This is, I don't know if it's the actual first edition, but you see his name's on the back. I don't know if you can see it on here. They aren't down here. If I can point it out on this camera. Matthieu Alexandre, that was 1787. That's all it was, a bit like the early, if anybody remembers the Daily Worker, that's how it was, like that, a bit like that. A rather dull bit of manuscript, but that was the sort of basic information that people got then back in 17... Well, they had nothing before that. That was that's the start of the newspapers. Now, Matthieu Alexandre, interesting family. Huguenots, I suppose, like lots of the free thinkers that came here were different thinkers. Very entrepreneurial. Anyway, the interesting thing about, as I was writing then in my article here back in 2010, was, of course, the establishment responded in a fairly predictable way. They locked him up. They tried to sue him. They tried to put him out of business because he commented on things that they were doing, and they wanted it all in secret. And of course, in 1787, it was all in secret what went on in the States. The Royal Court, I think, too. I don't know when the Royal Court was opened. But the States was closed. You couldn't go in there. But in that time, one of the things, I think, after Alexander, they tried to open the doors to the States. And as I said the other day, the Privy Council ordered that the doors of the States building, States Assembly, wasn't the same building in those days, of course, they should be left open so the public could hear what was going on. But I didn't realise that decision of the Privy Council was resisted until 1833. The Jurats especially, they didn't want their proceedings in public. They didn't want the public to know at all what they were up to in there. And basically, over the years, we've had variations on the same theme. Matthieu Alexandre was taken to court, sued for libel by the Crown officers, of course, because that's the only people who can do such things. And of course they ran the show, as we've said before on here. But today it was very interesting listening to them yesterday and going on about various amendments they were going to bring. But of course, virtually all of the amendments, anything progressive, was thrown out. They can't get past this thing. Of course, they had constables then in 1787. They can't somehow get it into their brains. Somehow it's something about they cannot get rid of the constables out of the States. For some reason, it's a fixation. And there were all sorts of schemes being hinted at or suggested where they could have got rid of the constables, and they could have had an island which was just all island vote like Guernsey's just done, for deputies, having deputies. Now, of course, that's something I would support. But what was fascinating about it all, they won one amendment they did approve, which came from a constable, it was rather ironic, was that there should be the none of the above option on election ballots. So when you get, I think her intention was it would apply to uncontested elections, but I thought it sounded like it was going rather wider than that today. And I think the public might have the idea that you can... There we are. I'm recording at the moment. Prime Minister again. They always want me to serve in the government. I won't serve in Boris's government. So anyway, this novel idea, which is a good idea to some extent, none of the above, because people are so frustrated that voting for who very few people, as we know, vote here. And a lot of people don't understand the system, as they were saying in the States. It's too complicated. But this option, so that people can sort of participate, but show their disgust at the fact you have 11 out of 12 constables returned without going to the ballot box, without having it. And there were several deputies at the last one. And to overcome that frustration, it's got to the state where they were saying none of the above is an option. Well, that's very, very sad, isn't it? There could actually be, I mean, it was based upon uncontested elections. But bearing in mind that people like Matthieu Alexandre, for him, free speech, expression of opinions was so important back in 1787. What has happened? And I've got on here, over here, I don't know if you can see it. I can lift up the camera here. That's Russian television. Now I know it's the English version of Russian television, but they report all sorts of weird things. And if I twiddle the knob on there, you will say we get television reporting news from all over the world. And of course on this thing, this computer, you can get information from all over the world. And things like Facebook, you never know who's going to pop up on there next. I tend to look at Jersey, Channel Island things, but I try to look at other things as well, what's going on in the world. And it's all there, knowledge is there, it's all available. But who really wants it? This is one of the dilemmas I think the states members were trying to grapple with today. They were really beginning to wonder why they exist. There was a sort of a very strange... And Mr. Guido, or Deputy Guido, who's rather difficult to understand. I mean, he's French. He speaks with a very strong French accent. Very difficult to understand what he actually says. But he said he'd been looking through Facebook, and he was looking at the topics which people were writing on. He said there were hundreds of people, local comments, Politics Jersey, similar pages. Virtually no comment on politics as such. And there were even states members apparently saying today that they're not interested in politics. They're actually representatives in our government. They're not interested in politics. Because it used to be, years ago, when Senator Shenton Sr. was in the States, they used to say that, politicians say, oh, we don't have politics, not party politics. We don't have politics in our government. We don't have it. It's because they wanted to disassociate themselves. They think because it's political, that is inevitable. You're going to have a left-right divide. You're going to have a lot of Bolshevik socialists, unionists, progressives upsetting the status quo. And I suppose in their way, I mean, if you listen to them today, there are some extraordinary reactionary states members in there who've got very strange ideas. I mean, they've got ideas that would be very suitable in 1787 to be the ruling party, the ruling group, the same group that's there today. And so the country parishes, the representation. And this divide, it was talked about today, of trying to increase the vote for St Helier. And no, they don't want that. They want St Helier. They want the people, the plebs, kept in their place. They want the government to have the superiority in the parishes, in the country parishes. So they run the show, as they always have. And it was remarkable that they could actually make these things. And of course, there was no strong opposition. There were people speaking for and against. But even those people that you might call progressive, they didn't really, when it came to, they couldn't grapple with changing the system. They couldn't seem to grapple with it. I mean, things like there were international obligations, human rights. Oh my God, it's a totally different language. People just simply do not speak that language here. I found the whole experience two, three, I don't know if it's on again tomorrow. I think they've probably finished with electioneering elections. I think whether it's going to go on for more, but they've resolved virtually nothing. They've changed virtually nothing. I don't know whether the road show will carry on. Deputy Labby's been taking it round the parishes, and extraordinary nil response from parishioners who attend. Obviously, if you go on Facebook, there's acres of discontent. This is what the Frenchman was saying today. There's loads of discontent expressed, and the states members obviously get very upset by what's said about them, but there's virtually nothing of a political content. There's no discussion. We've got a communications unit now in Jersey, an official one. It employs dozens of people, and what does it tell us? It's just a spinning, isn't it? It's just propaganda. That's all we're getting. Where can we get the idea that Matthieu Alexandre, he wanted? The other thing about Matthieu Alexandre, of course, was when they tried him, there was no trial. He didn't have a trial by jury. There was trial by jury, but they didn't have one in his case. And he fought for years to try and get trial by jury reintroduced in Jersey. Now, this is how things carry on here. These basic, fundamental rights, somehow or other, the ruling party doesn't engage with them. I call them a party because they've got all the attributes of a party, except you don't join them, you're just assumed you join them. There's a status quo. It's the established view. And if you attack it like me, you get called all sorts of names. I'm attacked because I have different views. There's an official Jersey view which you have to go. And it includes things like having parish constables. There's this adherence to the parish structure as though it actually means anything. I don't know anybody who actually reckons the parish system does anything very much for them. What does it do? I don't know. Where's the show? I mean, it could be a wonderful system. It could be, don't get me wrong. You could have 12 parishes working together, doing wonderful things, providing a real service. But this business where they play around as government and suppress reform, it's really quite frightening. So there we are. This was me today. There he is, Matthieu Alexandre. I don't know. This is a guy who deserves a monument. I don't think he's got a monument in Jersey. This is another aspect of it, isn't it? Building monuments. Who do we remember? Who do we remember? Why do we remember them? This was a guy who tried to do something constructive. And so he got prosecuted for trying. Now this, back then, here, look, then when this was on, as I say, they were trying to close us down, the bloggers, they were trying to close us down. Even organisations like the BBC were on the establishment side. They would have loved us to be closed down. But as they were saying in the States today and yesterday, they embrace blogging today. I mean, you can use the JEP, for example. You can send them communications, which as far as I know they publish, without name and address. You can have all sorts of silly names, which in my day, I took 13 complaints to the JEP years ago because they objected to the way I styled myself. But now anything goes. You can put discussions on there. You can put your view, you can express your views. But the official view, the communications unit, there's no rapport there. We can't write to the communications unit and have a dialogue with them. That's not what it's there for. It's just to put out the official view. And it's very dangerous. It is very dangerous. Even the JEP, when it started, Mr. Guiton, he actually put out his manifesto that he wanted a forum where people could discuss things. Of course, he was a Methodist, so he had a little bit of reaction in him. He was a conservative Methodist, of course. But his newspaper was supposedly to provide a good public service. But it'll die soon. Obviously, it will soon. It'll be coming through your door about the size of the old Daily Worker, like this. It's just a little 4 pages. Or it'd be like the Bailiwick Express, which doesn't come through the door at all. It comes through on the machine. It comes through. It's a blog, basically. The Bailiwick Express people. They've somehow or other, I don't know how, they've got the status of a newspaper. I can't go to press releases and so on, but they can. I don't know why they're any more of a newspaper than I am. There's no regulation of newspapers as such in Jersey. Thank God. I don't think there should be. But they always talk about the official press, the attributed, what's the word they use for it? As though they've got some status. Well, they're not. There's no organisation in Jersey which controls, regulates them. There's no regulation. If we make a complaint, you can't make a complaint against the so-called official press here. So this is it. It's my little whinge there. I was fascinated by what was going on in the States. And I was amazed that they came up with that conclusion. None of the above. We hate you so much we won't even vote for you. That should tell us all something very seriously wrong with this system, isn't there? And if the states members don't get the message from that, well, I don't know who's going to stand. By the way, a lot of these, they don't like being sniped at. Of course they don't. Nobody likes being sniped at. But this is what it is now. Look, this thing here, the computer. Social media, it's not very social at all, it's very antisocial. But if they, it is, that's the way it is. And they've created the situation. If I put stuff on here, very few of them ever respond on social media. There's no rapport, there's no engagement with the public. Engaging with the public, well, the states members don't engage. Even if you write to them directly, email them, post them a letter, phone them, leave a message, they still ignore you. And they wonder why the public's hating them. Well, I don't know what they hate more, the public, the virus or states members. It's difficult to tell. I wish there was a vaccination about states members. I wish we could get one so that we could, I don't know what we would want though, that we would accept their views or reject them all. I don't know. Today, the idea that you have none of the above, I suppose that's progressive thinking, really. That's enough for today. That's enough whinging for today.